What's going on? Welcome back to the Too Tall Sports Podcast. My guest today is Tim Hagerty. He is the play-by-play broadcaster for the El Paso Chihuahuas. Yes, the Chihuahuas. It's AAA for the San Diego Padres. So I have him on to discuss his journey as a broadcaster coming from the Northeast and all the fun stuff he's seen in his minor league broadcasting career. He's done over 2,000 broadcasts. So very impressive, long career for Tim. And talk some baseball today. So happy about that and happy to have him on the show. As always, you can follow me at Too Tall Sports Podcast. That's on Instagram. On Twitter, it's at Too Tall Sports. Check out my YouTube page where you can subscribe, rate, review, all this stuff, share, like, everything. Please go to my YouTube page and watch. If you want to watch the interviews, you can do it there. Every Thursday morning, I drop an episode. So please check that out and subscribe if you could. And also on the audio side, I am on Apple Podcasts. So just type in Too Tall Sports Podcast, subscribe there. All the episodes are on the audio form there, as well as Spotify. And on both of those, as I mention every week, you can hit the 5 stars, which would really help the ratings and the show exposure to help the show grow. So I'd really appreciate it if you hit the 5 stars if you haven't done so already, whether it's Apple Podcasts. If you scroll all the way down to the episodes, bottom of it, episodes page, you can find the 5 stars. If you don't mind leaving a review, that'd be awesome as well. Just, tell everybody how great the show is or the content, whatever you like. And with Spotify, just now you can do a 5-star and a subscribe or a follow. So that'd be awesome. We're also in Pandora, Google Play, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts, we're there. So please check out the Too Tall Sports Podcast. And with that, we will get to my interview with Tim Hagerty. All right, welcome back to the Too Tall Sports Podcast. My next guest is the play-by-play broadcaster for the El Paso Chihuahuas. They are the AAA affiliate of the San Diego Padres. He is also the author of a baseball book titled Root for the Home Team, which chronicles the origins of some of the off-the-wall team names in minor league baseball. He's originally from Canton, Massachusetts, and I'm happy to have him on, the award-winning broadcaster, Tim Hagerty. What's going on, Tim?
Brett, nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Great to have you on. Glad to get you. You're, entrenched in minor league baseball for a long time. And so you know it as well as I do. So it's good to get another minor league person who's been around the game a lot. So it's great to have you.
Great. Yeah. Look forward to it.
Yeah, definitely. And just so my listeners know, a quick side note, when the Padres were still in Tucson for AAA, I played against them in 2013 while I was in Reno, and Tim, of course, was the broadcaster. So it's always kind of cool to find different connections there. So for you, is it any thoughts on Tucson versus El Paso?
Yeah, I enjoyed living in Tucson. It was a very unusual situation because the team was temporarily there, and we knew that. It was an unusual scenario where the Padres AAA team was in Portland, Oregon. They shared their stadium with a minor league soccer team, the Portland Timbers. The Portland Timbers were elevated to Major League Soccer, and they said, you can't share the stadium with the AAA baseball team anymore. Plans A, B, and C all fell through for a new stadium in Portland. So as late as November of 2010, they did not know where the Padres AAA team was going to play in 2011. Tucson had previously hosted AAA baseball. There was a capable stadium right there. So that became the temporary site as they sorted out the long-term future of the team. And I think that for the cards that it was dealt, I think Tucson did a good job recognizing it was a smaller budget, smaller staff, and that it was going to be a temporary scenario. But then El Paso put together a plan for a beautiful downtown stadium, and they came through on that. The stadium is spectacular. So the AAA team for the Padres relocated to El Paso for 2014, and it's been a smashing success. It's great. You can appreciate this playing. We even have visiting players that say El Paso is their favorite place to go because even on a Monday or a Tuesday night, it's lively. There's fans there. It's a great atmosphere.
Wow, I didn't realize that. Okay, so I never got to play in El Paso, but that's awesome to hear that. And we will come back to El Paso a little bit later. But I did want to start with something before we get to your background that I saw on your Twitter, that last year you eclipsed over 2,000 professional broadcasts. That's pretty incredible, man. That's a lot of games and a lot of time spent at the ballpark. What does that number mean to you?
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I keep a Word document of every game I've called. It has no purpose at all, but it's just something that I do. I keep track of things. And I just off the cuff had mentioned to my wife that in August it would be game number 2000. she whispered that to some people with the Chihuahuas, and they actually asked me to throw out the first pitch. And at first I thought, well, that's right before the game. I don't know. I appreciate it, but I don't know. And they said, well, what if you could do your pregame show while throwing out the first pitch? And I said, okay, now we're talking. So I actually put in earbuds, connected to the radio station via my phone, and did play-by-play of my own pitch from the field. So then I walked back up through the concourse to the radio booth while live on the air. You know, you see a familiar face, they wave to you, and they see you talking to yourself. They probably thought I was crazy. But that was a really fun night. And as far as 2000, I've just been lucky to get opportunities. It made me think back to when I was in college or just out of college. What we're all trying to do is just fighting for games. You fight for airtime. And if that means I'm going to do this job or move to this city, and to be able to do 2,000 professional baseball games was a great honor.
That's awesome, man. And so how did it, I have to ask, how did it go when you were announcing your own pitch?
Good. I played baseball through high school, but
okay.
You know, at that time, age 39, I had not thrown a baseball competitively, you know, in 20 years. So
sure.
I actually, as crazy as it sounds, did sort of go into my backyard and throw a baseball a few times. And I felt good about it. From talking to people that have thrown ceremonial first pitches, the thought was so many of them bounce, but very rarely do you airmail it. So the thought was aim high, and yeah, the catcher got it on a fly. And it was a fun experience being live on the air. I saved that recording as a pretty unique thing.
That's pretty awesome, man. Like that doesn't happen. So that's really cool that you're able to do that. And you spoke about playing in high school. So let's go to your background. I want to start in Canton, Massachusetts, not to be confused with Canton, Ohio, where the Hall of Fame for football is. But how would you describe your early life in Mass in the Northeast, playing sports as a kid growing up? What were you into?
Yeah, it was a baseball crazed area, as you know, being in the Boston area. I can remember as a kid pulling out the Boston Globe sports section and just devouring box scores. Probably a similar story to a lot of baseball broadcasters that chose this, where even as a kid, you know, I was a sports fan, but it was 99% baseball. And even now, that's what it's like. Occasionally, I've had a chance to fill in on New Mexico State basketball, a great Division I basketball program. They, you know, had a big upset in the NCAA tournament just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I noticed that after filling in on those basketball broadcasts, they were fun, they were exciting. But by the time I got to my car, I'm thinking about the Padres 40-man roster or the Rule 5 drafts. I think I've always, ever since I was very young, been wired solely for baseball. So whether that was playing or collecting cards or take the subway into Fenway Park, which was always a great thrill, and even some minor league stadiums in the area, Pawtucket's McCoy Stadium, longtime home of the Red Sox AAA team. I have some great memories there. So yeah, Canton, Mass. It's right near Boston. It's only 15 minutes away, but it was kind of a suburb atmosphere. You know, you never felt like you were unsafe. So it was a good place to grow up.
Yeah, no, I bet. And I mean, obviously in the 80s or the 90s, really, it just wasn't great for the Red Sox. And all of a sudden, once 2004 hit, the last almost 20 years has been a dominant, for the most part, Red Sox reign. How would you describe what you grew up with as a Red Sox fan and then the last 18 years as a Red Sox fan?
Yeah. People will ask me that. And as a kid, I was always captivated by the game, fascinated by it. This surprises some people, but I really was never a kid that got angry about losses. I would never, I wasn't a kid that cried if the Red Sox lost. Sure. Even as a kid, I remember always hoping for a close game when I went. I just really loved the strategy, this pitcher versus this hitter. Now I do follow the Red Sox probably more than your random American League team. But the truth is, covering Pacific Coast League baseball and NL West affiliates like you in Reno, like Albuquerque with Colorado, like Sacramento with the Giants, I know much more about those teams than I do the Red Sox.
Right.
But as far as their World Series, yeah, it's been quite a run. as a kid, I wasn't old enough to remember the Bill Buckner play in 1986, but I heard so much about that growing up in the 90s. And it was almost like that was so much of the identity of being a Red Sox fan, was not only have they not won the World Series in 86 years, but they were close a lot. I mean, it was different than the Cubs curse in that reason. The Cubs did not contend nearly as much over the years as the Red Sox did. They were so close.
Yeah.
Sort of like what Cleveland's going through now. I mean, Cleveland makes it to Game 7 of the World Series in 97, in 2016. I mean, they had that 3-1 lead in 2016. So I think that if you ask my friends and family, probably none of the other World Series matched the emotion of 2004 because they had just waited so long. You'd read these stories about elderly people that literally, lived into their 80s and never saw it happen.
Yeah.
And quite a run they've had with the other sports too, what the Patriots have done.
Oh, it's been
I can
title
remember
town
being young.
yeah. I mean,
The Patriots, sometimes they wouldn't be on TV because the games didn't sell out. I mean, to think what that's become since.
Oh, Boston's just been on fire for the last 20 years. It's crazy. So I'm obviously I'm a West Coast guy, so I think hopefully the run is close to over. So, but anyways, no, that's awesome that you got to grow up and see all those great players come through. So when you were in high school, you said you played baseball. So when did you start to think like, I'm not going to play college baseball, I'm going to try to go to school for broadcasting? How did that all come about?
I was really lucky that the Canton, Massachusetts town cable access station is actually in the high school, and they have a broadcasting class. So as young as 17, I was hosting a monthly show and doing play-by-play, basketball, hockey, field hockey. So I was fortunate that in high school, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I heard about this college, Northern Vermont University. It had a different name back then, but it's a small college up near the Canadian border. I've lived on both borders. Now I live miles from the Mexican border. But it was a smaller college and it was a really specific broadcast program. So I targeted it for that reason. So I was fortunate to, at a young age, everything that comes with broadcasting, where I'm a high school student, but I'm preparing, I'm learning how to interview the players. And then once the game airs, because it did actually air in the town and would get some feedback, you're learning the emotional side of it, of other kids are impressed at your play-by-play, but then also your teacher gives you some constructive criticism. So you're sort of trying to balance being 17 years old and everything that comes with that, but also I have confidence that maybe I have some ability to do this, but then also making sure you have thick skin when somebody says, okay, well, you're speaking with a Boston accent. That's not going to fly when you try to send out your demo tapes.
Right.
So that was one big challenge, was really training how to pronounce every word, really.
Yeah. And I actually saw it was called, was it Linden State? Because I had never heard that name before.
You did your homework.
Yeah, of course, man.
Yeah, it was Linden State College, and they recently had a merging with some other Vermont state colleges. So now it's Northern Vermont University,
Gotcha.
Which I like better because now I don't have to explain to people where it is. The name tells you where it is.
Exactly. No, that's awesome. So that's cool. Were there any other schools in play for you, or you were dead set, I'm going to Northern Vermont?
Yeah, I had applied to Emerson College in Boston, which has a broadcast and also known for its theater program.
Okay.
Northeastern, also in Boston. Reno's new broadcaster went there. They have a broadcast program there. But what I liked about Vermont, and this proved correct, was that it was in such a rural area that it allowed me to get part-time jobs with a local radio station or a local TV station, where it was different than the college radio station, where there's some expectations there. You're being paid, you're setting up the equipment. Even things I do now, I think back to Vermont and how much it helped me. A lot of the similar scenarios that happen now, I had been through that before. There's an equipment problem and you're live on the air. What do you do? And
so you kind of got to like, it was small enough where you got to like get your reps in basically and learn.
Exactly. Yeah. I think back to Vermont, it was almost like my first job and not my college. Because if I was in a bigger city, they probably wouldn't let a 19-year-old kid working on a Boston accent or eliminating one be on the air. Right. Whereas in a rural area, the bar was a little bit lower there as far as who could be on the air.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. I did see something funny, I think, on one of your bios that, did I maybe see this correctly? You broadcasted an ice fishing contest. Is that right?
Yes. That was another great thing about working for a small town radio station in Vermont, the different things you'd cover. In addition to sports play-by-play, I've been to school committee meetings. I've been to town meeting day, which is a big day in Vermont where the local towns gather and vote on whether or not they should buy a new snowplow and that type of thing. And yeah, there was an ice fishing event in Danville, Vermont, and I called in live updates to the radio station about that. It's quite a scene. They probably don't have ice fishing events in Southern California where you are, but
nope. We don't get
if you
any
ever
ice
have the
over
chance
here.
to go. Yeah.
I was hoping someone caught something for you. So you, I mean, if no one caught anything, that's a tough broadcast.
Yeah, it was like, they call it a fish fry, where the whole town gathers, people catch fish in their ice fishing shacks. It sounds obvious, but it was absolutely freezing. I tip my hat to them, but I have no comprehension of why someone would choose to spend their Saturday sitting in below zero weather in a shack, but they do. And then it actually becomes like a summer barbecue, only a winter version, where people fry the fish. And it was a really cool scene, actually. People gathering, catching up with old friends, below zero weather, standing on a lake.
Wow. I can't imagine. That's pretty crazy that people do that. But hey, that's small town stuff out there in the Northeast. So after you graduated and you left, formerly known as Linden State, what was your first professional gig and how did you get into baseball from there?
Yeah, I knew that I wanted to be a baseball play-by-play announcer, and I had read about the winter meetings. And at this time, this is 2004, this is really before social media has burgeoned the way it is now. I thought I had a secret with the winter meetings. I thought I had discovered this event that I was going to go, and it was going to be like people making me offers and I would have to decide. So I got my Baseball America directory, which lists the general managers of every minor league team, printed off my CDs. You know, now we send links when it comes to a demo, but back then it was CDs. And I walked into this big auditorium in New Orleans where the winter meetings were, and I saw about 100 guys that looked exactly like me, wearing their suits, holding their CDs, holding their Baseball America directories. And there were 4 job openings. And I thought, oh my God, this is more competitive than I imagined. But I was lucky to get a couple of interviews and was hired by Idaho Falls, which was the Royals rookie league team. And that was a great experience. I had never been anywhere out west like that. So my father and I packed the car and drove from Massachusetts to Idaho.
That's awesome. And what was your, I mean, that's rookie ball. So what was your first, was it kind of a shock to you how it all worked in the beginning?
Yeah, I was so excited. I don't think you could have gotten me down for anything, but
yeah,
it was a great learning experience because there was only 4 full-time employees at the ballpark. So leading into that season, you're working on sales calls. And one day, the high school kid that worked hourly as the mascot couldn't make it to a photo shoot. So I volunteered and hopped in the mascot suit. I was Charlie the Chucker. I remember laughing about that. You know, I'm bragging to my friends that I'm a professional sportscaster, and there I am dressed up like a chucker bird. But that's life in minor league baseball. And then once the season started, it was awesome. Taking these bus rides through Montana and Utah, it was as scenic as I imagined. And I don't know about your experience in short season ball, but I just remember it being such a positive atmosphere. Like the players are just thrilled to be professional baseball players. Nobody's, you know, feeling like they've been screwed over by their organizations yet.
Right.
Everyone's so optimistic, and it was fun. Billy Butler was on that team, who had a great career.
Yeah.
I had a chance to interview him last year after all these years later, you know, 2004. And then I interviewed him in, I guess it was 2020. So 16 years later. That was fun to do.
Yeah.
Another guy on that team was Ed Lucas, who was a really nice story back in 2013 or 14. He made his major league debut in his 30s. He really grinded for a while. And bounced around and made it to the big leagues. He was on that team. So it was awesome. To this day, it was really great memories for me. And then for me personally, it also was a good learning experience because everywhere you go, there's more listeners. And with that comes some more pluses, like some more people that come up to you and tell you nice things, but there also comes a little more heat. I remember a fan just kind of bumped into me in the concourse and said, "I like listening to you, but you don't say the score enough." And at that time I was 22, and in my head I was thinking, well, I know that that's important. I was almost like defending myself. I was like resistant to that, which looking back, it's like the most harmless criticism in the world. But that was a great lesson. Here I am in 2022. I still think about that guy. This guy was listening to games and he wasn't receiving what he needed. So that was great critique.
I've heard that from other broadcasters, like it never hurts to oversay the score or the time of the game or what for you inning or whatever.
Yeah, especially on radio. On television, you have that score bug in the corner where
Right.
everyone instantly knows the score in the inning. But somebody that's hopping into their car after running an errand, you always have to think about the person that's listening for only 10 minutes of that game. Where are we geographically? Where are we with the innings, with the score? And maybe even a 5-second recap of what happens. It's 2-0 Reno. Brett Lauren is not allowed to hit, and we're in the 5th inning. Give them a headline of the story of the game to that point.
That would be awesome if that was what's going on. I appreciate that. And speaking of me pitching, so you did end up going to Mobile, where I played. Most of my listeners know I was in Mobile, Alabama for a couple of years, or 1.5 years. Double A is a step up from where you were before. What do you remember about being in Mobile and also the Southern League and good old Hank Aaron Stadium down there?
Yeah, just saying Hank Aaron Stadium, that's one of the great memories I have, is that I had a chance to be around Hank Aaron 4 or 5 times. What a thrill that was. Just a complete gentleman. And I always think back to how he handled things when his record was being broken and in the controversial way that it was being broken, but you could not get Hank to give a hot take on that at all. You could not, he was not going to participate in that. He tipped his cap, taped a kind video to Barry Bonds, and that's what he was like. Quick story, the 2005 Southern League AllStar Game was in Mobile. And this is the busiest day of the year for the Mobile Bay Bears staff.
Right.
And the general manager of the team comes in to my office and said, "Hey, can you go pick up Hank Aaron?" Hank was the luncheon speaker that day, the day of the All-Star Game. And I sort of laughed. He's like, "No, I'm serious. To be honest with you, we're all so busy and I know you'd appreciate it." So at that time, Hank Aaron's mother was still living in her 90s. And when he stayed in Mobile, would stay at his mom's house. At that time, Hank was in his mid-70s.
Wow.
So I drove, and out walks Hank Aaron and gets into my old beaten up Ford Taurus. And
no way.
Yeah, it was a great 20-minute ride. And what I found was that he was actually asking more questions to me than vice versa. He was speaking at that luncheon, and he wanted to really get a feel for who was in the audience, where these players were coming from. And I remember telling him, this year's had a great crop of talent in the Southern League. Every team has actually had a player go right from AA to the majors this year. And 2 hours later, Hank's on stage and he's saying motivational comments to the players. And he said, every single one of you have had a teammate go straight to the majors this year. I said, "Hank, you're stealing my material here. Hank Aaron stole my line." But,
no, that's awesome.
Yeah, Mobile in general was a great experience. As you alluded to, it was a much higher level of play, going from rookie ball to AA. It was my first time doing 140 games. At the Pioneer League level in Idaho Falls, it was just 76 games. So things like, it sounds crazy for an announcer. I know you're used to this as a player, but taking care of your body, because in August, you don't want to be exhausted when you're on the air. You still want to have that same enthusiasm and zest to be there that you do in April. So it was in Mobile that I kind of realized that, where, okay, in the hotel, I'm going to be doing push-ups and sit-ups, and I'm going to try to go to bed at a normal time. And, if my buddy that announces for the other team says, hey, you want to go to a restaurant or a bar after the game, I'm going to make that one beer and one beer only. Because I think that's like not brought up enough in the announcing job is, what does your body feel like? What does your brain feel like? We've all had those professional moments where like we're in a meeting or something and we're tired, and there's an obvious difference in feeling in your performance. Your words aren't coming to you as quickly if you're tired on the air. So things like that I learned in Mobile.
Yeah, and I've had another other broadcasters on, and they say like the food you eat before broadcast is important too. You don't want to feel like you gotta go to the bathroom or feel like crap on the air, like you were saying. It is important.
Yeah, I think it, like, how your body feels is such a big part of play-by-play. Like my hybrid watch here keeps track of my sleep, and just my opinion, but once that became an option to see how many hours and how deep the sleep was, I've done that every day of my life since that's been available. I think that's such a big thing. Some people's bodies, I think, maybe are different than mine, and they can thrive that way. There's stories about the Padres general manager, AJ Preller, that he reportedly sleeps like a couple hours a night. That's all. I would be a total mess if that happened. That would not be good play-by-play, but maybe his body can pull that off.
Some guys are wired that way.
Yeah. Which I guess it's a gift to be wired that way. If you can still function, you're probably more productive if you're awake more total hours. But
right.
My body is not like that, which is a big difference now in the Pacific Coast League. You're going to want to punch me in the face when I tell you this, but now there's a day off every week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So what you experienced and what I experienced for years of, you finish a homestand, you get home at midnight, you wake up at 4 a.m., go to the airport, bounce around a few airports, and then a game that night in a city states away. They don't do that anymore.
Usually it was maybe one day off a month, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. All-Star break until the end of the AAA season was always a grind. It was like one day off in between mid-July and Labor Day.
Crazy. I mean, that's just the idea that you're supposed to be able to perform at a high level with that kind of those conditions and trips and lack of days off is insane. So I'm glad they're fixing that. I'll stick in AA for a second, and in general with the whole minor league baseball. Your book was called Root for the Home Team, and we talked about it being, some funny names in baseball. One of them in that league was the Montgomery Biscuits, always one of the fan favorites. There's other ones I remember, like Pensacola Blue Wahoos. There's some new ones like the Trash Pandas or the Sod Poodles or all these random names now. What inspired you to write the book outside of funny names? And then what are some of your favorites also?
Yeah, when I was in Idaho Falls, the team name was the Chuckers, and that was the first year that they were named that team. So I just found that people kept bringing up minor league team names. So I looked for a book about the great minor league team names of the past and present, maybe with some photos and some logo images in it. And there wasn't one. There had been encyclopedias that listed all team names, but as far as a backstory, maybe a fun fact about that team, I just had this image in my head that would be a fun book. So for 6 or 7 years, I worked on that. That was my side project. I had never written a book before. So once it got to a point where this could be a book, I have no idea how this gets from my laptop into a bookstore. So I actually bought How to Get Your Book Published for Dummies. And it was a great book because for somebody like me that was outside the publishing world, it told you how to write a proposal, what kind of marketing strategies they want to see in it, sample images, everything that a publisher would want to see. So after a few dozen rejection letters, got a publishing deal with the Cider Mill Press based out of Maine. They do their distribution through Simon & Schuster, so they really blasted out there to bookstores across the country. And it's funny you mentioned Root for the Home Team. I didn't get to pick that title. I kind of thought the title should have a couple team names in it.
Yeah.
I didn't really fully get it. But then one day I was doing a radio interview with a guy in Nebraska, and he said, "I just love this title, root for the home team. Like it's like a play on words, like the origin for the team name, like at the root of it." So here's this guy explaining to me the title of my
He's
book.
telling you.
"Oh, that's why they did that." Oh, but it was a fun experience. I got to do a lot of interviews about it, including NPR. ESPN.com did a fun article about it. And that was the thing about it. It was like, in the summertime, there's less news typically.
Yeah.
So it became this fun thing for sports talk radio stations to talk about. And as far as my favorites, so back then, a long time ago, like in the early 1900s, team names were less official. Now, a lot of times they'd evolve from the sports writer calling them something in the articles, and then it stuck as their team name.
Right.
And sometimes when there wasn't a name like that, they'd use the city name. So the Trentonians.
Yeah.
And my favorite in that regard is the Walla 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 Wallas. That was a true team name.
How creative of them.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my God. They couldn't find like a bear or a cougar or a,
exactly.
What I mean?
Right.
Come on. That's
crazy. Somebody told me like their cap should have been W4.
Yeah.
Walla 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 Wallas.
How about some of the current ones right now?
Yeah, I love the Fort Wayne Tin Caps in Indiana. They're in the book. Johnny Appleseed is reportedly buried there, and he wore a metal pan on his head, so that's where Tin Caps comes from.
Okay.
Regrettably, the team I announced for, the El Paso Chihuahuas, they're not in the book because the book came out in 2012, and the Chihuahuas were born in 2014. So some of the more recent crazy ones aren't in there for that reason. The New Orleans Baby Cakes, for example, they debuted in 16, I think.
Yeah.
But some other current ones, I really like, speaking of the Southern League, I thought the Biloxi Shuckers is a cool name. I like when a team name ties into their area.
Yes.
And Shucker is an oyster phrase that they do on the bay.
Right. Biloxi's a newer team, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Biloxi came in
Huntsville
oh, that's right. You and I both went to Huntsville. So you didn't pitch in Biloxi as a visitor, but I think Biloxi 2015 was their first year.
Yeah, that sounds right. The Biscuits doesn't make your favorits list?
Yeah, I like the Biscuits. Yeah. A funny story about the Biscuits that they told me when researching that book. Montgomery's first year was 2004, and there were some crazy team names, but it wasn't the way it's just exploded now with Trash Pandas, as you described. So there was this summer festival the summer before Montgomery's new stadium opened, in which they were going to announce the team name. And this DJ named Big Bubba went up on stage, and he said, "And now your Montgomery Biscuits." And they pulled down the curtains and showed the Biscuits logo. There wasn't applause, but there wasn't anger. It was just, you could hear a pin drop from what people tell me. It was just shock. Like, I don't know how to respond to this.
What a random name.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine what it felt like to be on stage and to see these people stare at you. But they went on to sell a lot of merchandise. I think they've done a great job with the branding. The team colors are butter and blue, not yellow and blue, butter and blue. And they had some great players in the years that I was in the Southern League. I saw Evan Longoria hit AA home runs there. A lot of those great players that came up with the Devil Rays or the Rays went through Montgomery.
Yeah, no, for sure. And speaking of players you saw, it's a perfect segue. I did want to ask you, you've been in professional baseball for a long time. As some of the standout people that you've seen, the talents that have come through minor league baseball, who are some of the big names that come to mind? Even if, I don't know if they maybe dominated the big league level or maybe they did, but guys that you've seen, you're like, that's some of the best baseball I've seen.
Yeah, the 2007 Mobile team was incredible. How many players were on that team that went on to long major league careers? Max Scherzer, Justin Upton, Mark Reynolds, Carlos Gonzalez, all AA teammates on that was the
Diamondbacks,
team.
Right?
That's right. That was the Diamondbacks AA team at the time. And I remember one day, as you know, at the AA level, there's a bus that goes from the hotel to the ballpark each day. Typically, there's an early bus and a late bus. Typically, at least when I was broadcasting AA games, most guys go on the early bus rather than just sit in a hotel room.
Right.
But there was one day I had something going on where I went on the late bus, and it was just me and the starting pitcher, Max Scherzer.
Uh-huh.
Just the two of us on this bus. And it was about a 15-minute ride to the ballpark. And I remember Max telling me that as a fan in St. Louis, he was watching Bud Smith's no-hitter. And Max said as a high school kid, he had to go to the bathroom, but he just did not want to leave this couch because this pitcher for his favorite St. Louis Cardinals has a no-hitter going. He doesn't want to jinx anything. And it's such a memorable conversation now because now he's gone on to pitch maybe 2 no-hitters in the big leagues, I think, at least one.
Oh, he's amazing.
Kind of a funny thing that as the minor league radio guy, you have a chance to have a conversation. And at that time, you have no idea if this guy's going to pitch in the majors or how long, but now he's become someone who's going to be a Hall of Famer.
What's crazy, I think, is, by the way, some don't realize the Diamondbacks drafted Max Scherzer along with all those other guys you talked about. It's weird to see teams draft so well and they don't end up having big league careers with that team. It's a common thing in baseball, but some teams more than others just don't realize what they have.
Yeah, and it's interesting. The Padres, the organization I broadcast games for now, some cynical fans will mention that too. And it makes me wonder, like, the list of every organization. Every organization must have a handful. I'm sure some more than others. But speaking of that, that's another guy that came to mind when you're asking me about players that I saw. But 21-year-old Anthony Rizzo in hitter-friendly Tucson, it was amazing. He had 100 plus RBIs in only 100 games. And he's not only the best hitter in the league, but he's one of the youngest players in the league.
21's young for AAA. It's mostly established guys in their mid to late 20s at that time.
You think he's hitting home runs against guys that were in the major leagues the week before, and he's the age of a high school, or I should say a college junior.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. And he was a really nice guy. As you probably know, he survived lymphoma.
Right.
And he approached the general manager in Tucson and he said, as long as I'm here, anything cancer related, any lymphoma walk, any visit to a children's hospital, I'm in. Pretty impressive for, a young player on the cusp of the major leagues to be thinking about that in the community.
Yeah, no, that's a great story. That's awesome. And he obviously has had a great career so far. So that's cool. You got to watch so many great players. I did see you mention in an interview that the highlight of your career, for the most part, I think, was announcing the 2019 AAA AllStar Game, which was in El Paso. What did that night mean to you? What do you remember about that game?
Yeah, it required a lot of planning. The AAA AllStar Game doesn't just air in the city that the game is held in. It's on a network of stations around the country. So there's some technical work that went into that. And I find that over the years, whenever you have a big event, in the end, I think, well, things went mostly well, but just kind of the way I am, you might think about that one thing that could have been better.
Sure.
But with the AAA All-Star Game in 19, it was awesome. Sold out crowd. The broadcast went smoothly. I thought my play-by-play was informative and captured how important that event was for downtown El Paso. With the Chihuahuas, we go to places like Las Vegas, and we've been to Nashville and these big cities that have NHL teams or NFL teams. But El Paso is that right mix of, it's a big city, but the Chihuahuas are the biggest thing in town, especially in the summer. So what I sensed here was people could not believe that this national event, this game that's on MLB Network, is taking place in El Paso. So I tried to really capture that, what a big deal this was for the city I live in. And I think that broadcast turned out really well. There were only 2 home runs in the game. Both were hit by El Paso players in the All-Star Game. Both guys that have gone on to play regularly in the majors, Luis Urias and Ty France. So that was indeed a highlight.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's a cool honor that you got to be a part of that at your home stadium. That's really cool. Speaking of different cities you've broadcast in, I did see, I don't remember them all, but some great stories and funny minor league moments. Baseball's always got some wacky things that happen that you've described during your career. Which ones come to mind as your favorite wacky minor league stories?
Yeah, I remember the first game I ever broadcast by myself. It was Idaho Falls against the Provo Angels in Provo, Utah. And they had this local banker throwing out the ceremonial first pitch. And this poor guy somehow got hurt, somehow twisted his knee throwing his pitch, and he cannot get up. And they have to call in an ambulance. They needed to help this guy get up, get into an ambulance. So this is all going on for 20 minutes. There's no game going on. It's the beginning of the season, so there's no stats or standings to talk about. And I'm just thinking to myself, what am I going to talk about? But it went okay. And it was actually sort of a confidence builder. It's like, okay, I can do this if I can fill time for 20 minutes with nothing to talk about. And this is in 2004. Broadcasters didn't commonly have laptops with out-of-town scores for that type of thing either. So you are really just describing what you see, maybe repeating the lineups or information on that day's team. Poor guy was okay. I shouldn't smile. He had a serious injury, but it was 18 years ago. So
yes,
it's not too soon. Another one comes to mind.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
We keep coming back to Montgomery, but there was this pitcher, Matt Elliott, for Mobile, and he allowed a game-tying home run in the 9th inning. And he went into the first base side dugout and was so upset after the inning that he slammed the bathroom door. And he somehow jarred the lock, and he can't get out. He's locked in the bathroom, and he's the current pitcher in the game. So Mobile's top of the 10th inning goes by pretty quickly. The team takes the field, but there's no pitcher, and there's nobody warming up in the bullpen. And I'm just baffled. And somebody slips me a note and says, pitcher locked in bathroom.
How does this happen?
And I was like, can I air this? Like, they're not trying to prank me, right? And the guy nods. He's like, it's true. So Mobile had to bring in a new pitcher. And poor Matt Elliott was stuck in there for 40 minutes after the game. Still, the Montgomery Fire Department had to come and break the door down. So yeah, you never know what you're going to call when you go to the ballpark that day.
That's pretty awesome.
Pitcher locked in bathroom.
That is great. I don't think I've ever seen that before. No, that's pretty funny. I also saw that everybody has their favorite cities to go to on the road and favorite places to be, whether it's restaurants or the ballpark, whatever it is, the fans. You said Salt Lake City was your favorite. No disrespect to Salt Lake. It's a beautiful city, but there's not exactly a lot happening there. So why is Salt Lake your favorite road city?
One day I heard Barry Larkin, the Hall of Famer, talking, and when people would ask him, what are your favorite ballparks? He found that subconsciously he was always answering the places that he played well.
Right.
So I think for me with Salt Lake, it's just a nice, clean, great hotel, good working environment there. And I walked to the ballpark there. As you remember, it's just a spotless city.
No, it's great.
Scenic views. And then you go to the stadium, and I love the stadium. We have a great view in the press box of the mountains that you can picture beyond the outfield fence there. And I remember when I was in Idaho Falls in rookie ball, the season did not start until June. So in late April, I drove down. It was only 2.5 hours, and went to a AAA game. And at that time, 22-year-old me, AAA felt like Mars, just how old and experienced these players are, what kind of a big city I'm in. So I think about that when I go back to Salt Lake, that now I get to call games in this park that a while ago I was starstruck by. So you're down on Salt Lake, huh?
It's just, obviously Vegas has a lot more happening, like Nashville or even New Orleans. It's a terrible ballpark, but like a lot of stuff going on. It depends what you really want. And I wasn't a guy that went out all the time, but Salt Lake, the city kind of shuts down early. There's not a lot going on, but beautiful scenery, like I said. So there are advantages to it for sure.
Yeah, we're lucky in the Pacific Coast League too, where most facilities are nice. As you and I both experience in the lower levels, some are, some aren't. But, once you get to AAA, most hotels are good. Most facilities are good. And I love places you can walk too. Like
yes,
Sacramento is like that, where the hotel is pretty close to the stadium. Make your own schedule as long as you're there by the time you have to be.
Yeah.
Love places like that where you're not relying on the shuttle or an Uber.
Right. Even Reno was fun. It's just, it is what it is, but Reno was a good time. So there's a little bit of gambling stuff going on if you can catch the theme there. So as a AAA broadcaster, you're like a player, theoretically one call away from the big leagues. What are, is that something? I'm sure it is. Any thoughts on becoming a big league broadcaster? What are your thoughts on that?
It's funny you phrase it that way. I think about a friend who said to me one time, "You're a sore throat away from the big leagues."
I mean, in broadcasting, yeah.
Well,
you're right.
yeah, it's not like, a pitcher injury, but yeah, I think that most broadcasters strive for that. That was their plan. That was their goal. So I'm still trying to get better. The openings are rare. I think that for someone like me, what a great thrill would be to fill in if they need somebody. A lot of AAA broadcasters have had a chance to do that. That being said, I never get down about that because I'm really lucky here in El Paso.
Yeah.
People listen, people care, people really follow this team closely, which is the best thing a broadcaster could ask for. People care what you're saying. So it's kind of like when I was younger, maybe in some smaller cities, I would apply for anything that was out there that was in the major leagues. But a couple of years ago, there was an opening where it was a major league team on the East Coast. You would do their radio pregame show, radio postgame show. Maybe you'd fill in for a game or two on play-by-play. It was a 1-year contract. It was a city where rent is insane. And El Paso, the situation I have here, to be honest with you, I didn't apply for that. Whereas maybe when I was young and single, and the job had less perks, maybe in my early 20s, that's something I'm applying for.
Sure.
So I guess that shows how lucky I am here that, there's an opportunity in a major market like that. And it made me think, I don't think so, to be honest. So I think that with how great El Paso is, it's made me more selective.
That's awesome. Well, that's great. I mean, if you love what you do, that's great. And you're still at a very, very high level, which is awesome. So let's talk about some Padres now. So of course you get to follow the team. You've been with the organization for a while. Tell us about maybe some guys that we might see in the big leagues this year with San Diego.
Yeah, I think San Diego, and I'm not just saying this, I think they could be a really good team this year. I know people feel the Padres took a significant hit, which they did when Fernando Tatis Jr., their best player, has been put on the injured list for what's going to be at least 2 months.
Right.
But the Atlanta Braves last year lost Ronald Acuna and they won the World Series.
Yeah.
If you have the supporting cast around, you can overcome that. What's interesting about the Padres, they've been so active when it comes to trades, free agent signings. There's actually more former El Paso Chihuahuas on the Guardians or the Brewers or the Giants than the Padres, as crazy as that sounds.
They've been very active.
Yeah. So, a lot of those players aren't homegrown, but the thing is that the prospects they had have netted them those players. You don't get Blake Snell unless you have quality minor leaguers going back the other way.
Right.
Yu Darvish, likewise, these players they've traded for. So it's been a really fun thing to follow. AJ Preller has been their general manager since 2014. And if you're a beat writer for the San Diego Padres, he must be the most interesting general manager to cover because they are so active. I mean, they are so aggressive. And even though the Padres in recent years have had some losing seasons, in this era where some teams are accused of tanking, the Padres have never done that during this administration, this
regime.
Or really any time since I've been around the Padres organization.
Yeah.
So I think that's admirable. I know, the Padres might have been criticized in 2015 when they traded for Matt Kemp and Justin Upton and Derek Norris, that whole wave, and James Shields. That didn't go well. But I didn't agree with that. I don't think you should ever criticize a front office for trying to win the World Series as soon as possible. And that's what they were doing. But yeah, as far as the Padres this year, Clevenger's back off the injured list. Joe Musgrove had a great season last year.
Yeah.
Snell had some strong starts. Darvish, some strong starts. I think they could be even better than last year.
On paper, they're really good.
Agreed. Yeah. Both the lineup and the rotation, I think, is really good. And with the extra playoff teams now in the NL, even if you can see the Dodgers are most likely to win the division, although who knows, the Padres certainly could. I think that enhances your likelihood that the Padres will make the playoffs even more.
I keep hearing this name, CJ Abrams, who's a upcoming shortstop. He's got to be, it sounds like someone to watch coming up this year, right?
Yeah, it's an amazing story. In that when Tatis was revealed that he was injured, it wasn't initially the plan that CJ Abrams might replace him. He was a high school pick just a couple of years ago. Because of the pandemic and because of his injuries, he's played in only 75 minor league games at all levels.
Not half a season.
Yeah. And the thing is, they're giving him reps as the starting shortstop in Major League Spring Training games, and he's hitting great.
Wow.
And to his credit, and also to the Padres' credit, he's now in the mix to potentially, nothing's announced yet, but maybe potentially break camp with the Major League Opening Day roster. And I think the Padres have always done that. I remember Franmil Reyes was with El Paso in 2018. Every team passed on him for the Rule 5 draft that winter. Anybody could have had him and didn't. And he hit so well for El Paso in April and May that he pretty much just forced his way to the majors. And I think the Padres have done that even if a player isn't on their radar to be called up, if they play well enough, they're going to get that chance.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. The aggressiveness, the Padres didn't used to be like this. So it's nice to see them going for it, right? Like you said, it's nice to see a team go for it, which is great. Last couple things here. As far as the rule changes with the DH, the universal DH, and some of the different, pitch clock stuff or runner on second, all that stuff. What are your thoughts on the rule changes in baseball?
I think the commissioner's office has taken some heat over the past year on a variety of things like the lockout. But I think when it comes to these rule changes, it has been an A+, because what they're doing is they've moved slowly. They're not drastically adding things, and they've selected, in this league we're going to do this, in this league we're going to do this. That way they can really zone in on individual rule changes at once to see what works. I love baseball as much as anybody, but I do think when there's more and more time in between balls in play, that's a problem.
Right.
And just like the other sports have done, and just like baseball has done throughout its history, I'm fine with a little bit of tinkering. I think about 8-year-old Brett Lauren, and you're sitting there at a game. Just like me, I'm sure you were captivated. I'm sure you loved it. But the things you reacted the most about is when the ball is in play. The shortstop makes a diving play. Now, let's say that instead of a ball in play every 2.5 minutes, which is probably what it was when you and I were watching games as a kid.
Yeah.
Now, what if it's 3.5, 4 minutes? That's a difference. And I think that's a problem. So personally, I like these experiments. And even though I love baseball and its tradition, I would be fine with a well-enforced pitch clock. And I think it would work.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think anything they can do to speed up the game is better. And as a former pitcher, I don't need to watch pitchers hit. I'm fine with the universal DH. It's better for offensive numbers anyway. So you agree with that, or you like pitchers hitting?
Yeah, as a kid, when the Braves run TBS, I love the strategy of the double switches.
Right.
But in the Pacific Coast League, when we're in so many hitter environments, double switches aren't the strategy. It's like those 14-12 game where the pitcher spot changes 3 different times and your scorebook is a complete mess. And you have to double check, okay, the pitcher spot is now 7th, not 5th, right? To be honest, it makes it an easier game to announce when it's a DH.
Sure.
So I'm fine with that. I've enjoyed following all these rule changes. I think in the end, it feels like the pitch timer is the one.
Yeah. I agree. We don't need a 30 seconds to a minute after every pitch where the guy walks around the mound and it's just like, dude, get back up there.
Yeah. And that's why it sometimes drives me crazy when people say, well, a pitch clock would only trim off 20 minutes from the game. but you're cutting out the 20 most boring minutes.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's just dead air.
Yeah. So to me, it's not time of game. It's pace of play. What are we watching? Is there a tempo there?
Right.
And it's not as if I want to go back to the 1990s. The other day, MLB Network had the 2012 World Series on, and it felt different, felt better. Even as recently as 2012, the pitchers, there was a noticeable tempo. And it's not only the pitchers. Batters are spending more time outside the box now than they did a decade ago.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, okay, I'm leading off an inning. I'm not looking for a sign. I take ball one. It was like 1 foot was outside the box, take a breath and back in, as opposed to now where batters are exiting, thinking about the meetings and the video and everything they watched previously. And it's nobody's fault. If I were a pitcher, I would probably do the same thing. If I've been trained, this is what I'm thinking about. I'm not blaming the players at all.
Sure. This is just how the game is now.
It just has evolved that way. Yeah, it's nobody's fault. But so I really appreciate what MLB is doing, recognizing this is a problem, and they've taken their time. And it feels likely to me that a pitch timer is coming to the big leagues.
I think it's probably good for everybody. Last question. For those of us that don't get to hang out in El Paso that much, what's some of your favorite parts about the city of El Paso?
Yeah, it is a much nicer city than some people picture. We have mountains here. There's a lot of hiking. My wife's son and I go on bike trails. There's places to bike. They call it Sun City. It's sunny 330 days a year. Apparently, that's the most in the whole country.
Wow.
I mean, winters are just great. It's right now I speak to in March, and it's in the 70s, but that'll be the case sometimes in January and February too. And it's a bigger city than a lot of people realize. There's 700,000 people here.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So, that's more than some states. It's a lot bigger than a lot of people think. So, players that have come through have said the same thing. They just say it's a really kind, nice place. I know a lot of people say that about their cities, but it's truthful here. I have a son who's in kindergarten, and it's like everyone we meet, his teachers, his swimming lessons coach, and it's like everybody is just so kind and familial. So yeah, truthfully, it's a great place to visit, and more people are finding that, and I hope that continues.
And of course, I have to ask about the food. So how about the food there, restaurant?
Yeah. I've learned a lot about Mexican food. Admittedly, I did not.
Yeah, you grew up in the Northeast, man. Yeah.
Yeah. And in Massachusetts in the 90s, it was like, not only I never had Mexican food, I had never even heard of anyone ordering Mexican food. So like when I first moved here, I sat down and they did have like a hamburger on the menu, and I was like, and I ordered the burger. But since then, I've tried new things. So there's a lot of Mexican food places that are not chains here that are original. And it's really cool when you walk in and you see like opened in 1937. There's a famous place, L&J Cafe, that literally people have been packing it for decades. Leo's near my house is another longtime famous place. So a lot of great Mexican food here.
That's awesome, man. Well, that's great. I'll have to get down there and visit sometime and have some good food down there and catch a game maybe with the Chihuahuas.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. So where can everybody, if they want to listen to the games of you or follow you online, where can everybody find all your stuff?
Yeah, thanks. epchihuahuas.com is the team website, and we're on all of the same apps that minor league teams are. So if you go to milb.com, you can find us there. You can also find the video feed there. I have Twitter at TD Hagerty, 1G. And yeah, I always love hearing from baseball fans wherever they are. So feel free to find me and send a note.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. We'll have to send everybody your way. And Tim, it was great to have you on, man. I wish you the best of luck during your season and have fun in El Paso. And hopefully I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you. Great to meet you, and best of luck with your show.
Thank you. My thanks to Tim Hagerty. Love that interview. Lots of great insight from a baseball career of a broadcaster, not just a player, but they go through the same stuff that we do as far as travel and hotels and crappy food and all that stuff. So they go through the same things. Like I mentioned off the top, 2,000 broadcasts. He's seen it all pretty much in minor league baseball. So really happy to have Tim on, and really enjoyed that episode. Hopefully you guys did as well. As always, you can follow me at Too Tall Sports Podcast. That's on Instagram. On Twitter, it's at Too Tall Sports. Check out the YouTube page. Please subscribe, rate, review, like, share, all the stuff. Leave a comment. Love to hear your feedback. So head over to the Too Tall Sports Podcast YouTube page if you want to watch the interviews there. We drop them every Thursday morning, 5 a.m., usually, maybe even earlier, 4 a.m. Pacific time. So check those out. Audio side, it's the same thing. Apple and Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, you can go find them there. Please subscribe, rate, and review. That would be awesome. And I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week for another great episode. Have a good one.